Hello and welcome to AXSchat. I'm really pleased to be able to welcome Dr. Nasser Siabi to the chat today. Nasser is someone that I've known for a very, very long time working in the assistive technology industry. Nasser is the CEO and founder of Microlink, which is a specialist assistive technology supplier based in the UK, but also elsewhere, and in fact, the largest assistive technology supplier in the UK, despite my best efforts when I was working for a competitor. So, welcome, Nasser. It's a real pleasure to have you with us. I know you do great work, but please tell us, a bit about what you do and how you got started and how you came to be in the industry.
Hi, Neil, and hi, everyone. Well, actually, it was because you were working for a competitor you made us speak. So thanks for reminding me of that. It's a pleasure to be here. I started this business around 25 years ago. It was a passion because I suffered from a rare genetic visual impairment, which essentially knocked me out of education for the first 15 years of my life, assuming you start at the age of 1 to study. But I was, age of 15, I kind of virtually failed most of my early years education because I couldn't really see well. And when you live in Middle East, inclusion is not really very high up on the agenda, especially in 1970s. Nevertheless, I came to UK. I settled here. I had a surgery. I got restored. So I started from virtually zero, went to college, managed to learn English, second language, and then managed to go to university and thankfully finished my doctorate in computer science, electronics, and physics to show that anyone is capable, even me, just given the right opportunity. So I think from there onwards, when I came out of university, I had an opportunity to help disabled students at university in 1992. And ever since, we've been working with both disabled students at universities. We're the first company to establish a proper system of support for them. It gave us the leadership in that sector for many years. And I'm proud to say after 25 years, we've really, we have data to show we've got 300,000 graduates went through our company to get the help in order to graduate from the course, which is an achievement for me. And that's really one of my proudest achievements of life. And I want to better that. I want to actually carry on doing the same, not just for the fortunate to go to university, go back to early years education, and certainly work environment, the employment sector is my biggest focus because that's where people find their purpose in life. Having a job is what you want as fulfillment and to continue living. And most people get left behind if they have any disability. So we focused on that for the past 10 years. And I'm also delighted to say the kind of processes we've established and the clients we've got make us very unique and global leader in what we do. And that's partly because the people I employ are so passionate about this work. Nearly 40% of my staff are disabled. So they're driving the business. I'm just lucky to be there with them on this journey.
And I see the work that you're doing, especially through stuff like the Business Disability Forum, and of course, yes, both as someone that's applied into the Disabled Student Allowance and as a recipient of that grant, it was a fantastic thing. It enables people access to education that wouldn't necessarily succeed otherwise. And it's as important for us to do that in the workplace. And I think with it being Digital Leaders Week, there's a focus on digital and strategic leadership going on, and there's lots of events going on for Digital Leaders Week in the UK. We were engaged as AXSchat last year. We were shortlisted in their DL 100, but essentially, I think the work that you're doing is really important because you're working with big business. They're going through digital transformation. What are you seeing in terms of the engagement from businesses to understand that digital and accessible are not incompatible?
A couple of months ago, a very good friend of mine came from US, and he said he came to Paris and then he came to London for a short visit. he sent me an email. It was quite a really nice email from a message. Said, look, I came to London and I found the atmosphere different. I saw more disabled people on the street that I've ever seen in places like Paris. It seems London is so inclusive, and I just felt it. I felt the genuineness of our people accepting, embracing disability. Now, obviously, that to me says London has become more accessible to people. People are no longer hiding their disabled children or disabled parents indoors. They're actually bringing them outside because they have access to more places. Now, how's that different to digital world? Everybody is now using computers, particularly those people who feel alienated and maybe lost the contact with their loved ones. Now they're all coming towards digital environment to actually be able to get in touch with their lost friends and family. And if it's not accessible, it's the equivalent of the old days where wheelchair users couldn't leave home. So we need to actually make sure everything we do includes everyone, not just the fortunate 80%, 90% that used to be able to do. So, and I think to me, the inclusion agenda is something that we should drive. The digital is so easy to do. Physical barriers are much harder to remove, not digital. The only thing I think people need to understand is put some thought behind design. Don't just jump into it, push out projects with the quickest turnaround with the lowest cost. Actually, put a bit more thinking behind it, then you end up removing those thoughtless kind of designs like building steps before a building so wheelchair users can't go in. What you're doing here is putting the kind of accessibility features in your design, which is easy to do. You don't have to reinvent anything. It's all there. It's just that being able to understand what to do and where to actually activate. And so everyone can participate. So I think digital leaders, you really should understand population as a whole want to engage, and they will do more if they're able to reach the platforms that you create for them. And if you don't, as someone said, I'll move away, take my business elsewhere. Not my business, also my family's business, because I'm the one who's got the money. I'm the one who's spending. So if I can go into a shop and buy shoes for myself, I won't buy shoes for my kids. If I can't do my shopping on your site, I won't do it for my family either. So that's your message. Make sure that everyone is included in your future design.
I agree with that. And I was recently at a conference, the Enabling Conference, and a corporation took me to the side and they said, Deborah, who do you really think is standing out in this space? Who's really standing out? What countries are standing out? And I said, I think it's fascinating what's happening in the UK, especially, what's happening in London and in England, because we're just really, it appears to me, and I had a conversation with Paul Smythe of Barclays, who is our who is our sponsor, which we appreciate. But I was talking to him about why is so much happening in the UK and with London and with leaders like Barclays and Microlink and Atos and others. And he said, y'all seem to be doing a lot of fighting in the US, which is very true, and a lot of litigation and fighting about the way to do it and the diversity groups. We're just doing a lot of fussing in the US. But we also are making progress. But sometimes when there's so much fussing is the getting much of the media attention, you don't see the good work that's being done. But I really, really see so much happening in your areas. And you said something that made me start thinking, I wanted you to elaborate on it. So you said that with your company, Microlink, that you are dealing with your customers in a different way. And to me, it is about digital disruption. And Neil mentioned we were waitlisted on the DL100, which is a very prestigious group. And it is about digital leadership and it is about digital disruption. But I was wondering if you wouldn't just elaborate a little bit on how are you really working with your customers in a way that enables them to be successful, enables their customers to be successful. I also will just mention a little note that Neil mentioned in the window, which is Gartner stats estimate that the total worth of global disability market is $8 trillion. And so to your point, we are becoming mainstream. We are becoming, and we would like to think at AXSchat, we're part of the reason why these conversations are becoming mainstream. But I would be curious if you could just elaborate on how you are part of the digital disruption, because we know you're a digital leader.
Well, I like to actually consider what we do is give people access to information. I mean, human beings only survive on exchange of information. Take it from the university level. Neil was involved in the same sector as I was. We have a bunch of very talented kids who are kind of left behind in our early years education. Teachers don't understand the phenomena of learning disabilities. If they do, they just don't know what to do with it. But if you break it down to a very simple barrier, the barrier is communication, reading and writing. That person could grow up to be a fantastic engineer, a great inventor. It could be a Nobel Prize-winning biologist, but he can't read and write. He can't spell, but that shouldn't be the hindrance for him to actually go up and achieve his true potential. So our job is to be able to facilitate communication. Take a blind person. So they have everything, all the faculties are in the right place. They've got what it takes in the top, in their head, but they can't, access the information the way that others do. Just make it possible for them to access the same information in a different format, either by audio or by braille. Once you do that, then that person is not only as capable, but more capable in areas that people who don't have those issues could never be able to achieve. And being somebody who struggles with a disability, they're resilient. So to us, all we're doing is removing barriers. We're not actually making life easier for them by giving them advantage. We're actually saying, well, if you are blind, can't see ahead of you, the best thing we can do is not dig a hole in front of you so you fall in it, or you put a brick wall in front of you so you slap, bang into it. So what we do is guide them towards a safer passage. And in the digital equivalent is, if I'm actually going to be shopping, if I'm going to be studying, if I'm going to be accessing, the loved ones using social media, I might have to access that information differently. If I'm dyslexic, I don't want too much cluttering on my screen or too many flashy colors come and go. If I've got epilepsy, I don't want. Remove those. Make it simple. And by the way, if you make something simple, you'll be surprised that people will actually start using it and they're not disabled. I always say the equivalent is parking bays. Make it suitable for disabled people, and non-disabled people are the first to park in it because it's easy to get into them. Make your digital space bigger for people who can't access it easily, and then you find that your customers, others will come and use it. Neil will tell you there was an example of a massive supermarket who had a website, but they thought, well, we feel sorry for the blind users, so let's create an alternative site for our disabled blind users. Very soon, that became the dominant site. People were using that more often than because it was so easy to get into. And then they discovered the power of simplicity, usability, and soon the rest of the site actually adapted some of the changes. And they produced stats that improved the traffic by 130, 150%. Same happened to another insurance company. So I think when I go back to that, the reason why it's not made accessible, it's not price, it's not cost, it's not know-how. Lack of awareness that there is a customer out there that needs it. IT people would do anything. We find a solution for anything. You've got to raise that to the level that they understand why they need to do it, and they'll do it. Sadly, budgets and deadlines is all imposed on them. I've always got involved at the last minute of the launching a massive multi-million-pound IT platform, and they've forgotten to ask the disabled users. Now, I mean, how is that for a big business that runs half the world's IT? That's a bad planning. As soon as you start mentioning it, we'll talk to the developers. And developers say, well, if you told us sooner, we would have built it for you. You didn't tell us. Yeah. So to me, it's forward thinking and understanding your customer base.
Yeah. Well, we know that from experience, the cost of planning to do accessibility is around 2 to 3% of the total project cost. the cost of not doing it can be anything up to and over 100% of the original project cost.
I
Why
kind of
wouldn't you plan? Why wouldn't you plan?
Well, I mean, that's one dimension. The other dimension is we have people failing because of the aging, failing their health because of age. We have people who were born with disabilities and people who may have accidents. Now, again, they have the same issues, access to information. You're working, and if you're working and you can't see the screen, do you have to give up the 98% of your other brain capacity just because the 2% doesn't work? Well, again, we have ways to make them engage in their work. They can do their job like anybody else. If anything, in certain areas, they absolutely outperform anyone without disabilities. You know, there was an example of a blind person in Sweden working for the forensics team, solving long-term cases that they couldn't by all listening to recordings of a phone call, by listening to the evidence and then finding tiny little clues that others missed, because he had that amazing ability to get rid of all the unimportant things and just focus on the important things. And that's because of his so-called disability. Actually gave him special abilities in elsewhere. So we find if people have loss of sense or loss of ability in one way, it's overcompensated in other ways. By giving them the access to the technology, you're able to actually shore up the weakness, but beef up the strength. And this is what the power of the technology has. But what I'd say, another thing we find, which we've come across many times, once you demonstrate the tools that is useful for disabled people, others say, wow, that's an amazing productivity tool. Why don't we use that across the whole organization? I'll give you an example of we went to school. We're teaching the teachers to use assistive technology for kids. These are 5 to 10-year-olds. You could imagine kids can't use like voice recognition. It's too early for them. However, when the teacher discovered what voice recognition could do for them, they started transcribing the lesson by speaking into a Bluetooth microphone, and it appeared on the screen. Every child was paying attention. Then we did a like dictation on an iPod, it was an iPhone. They actually bought 10 iPods thinking we can actually do recording, do our transcription instead of going and writing reports. We can do that while we're walking between classrooms. Mind mapping, perfect for a school project, everybody participating. So there are a lot of examples of the technology designed for people with disabilities, and it's been used by mainstream. Dragon was one of them. It was never intended for disabled people. It was intended for like professionals, and now it's used by both. So I think the digital inclusion, it brings out the best of both worlds, both accessibility as well as productivity.
So over the last couple of months, we have been all listening about conversations about GDPR, data privacy. It was basically all over the place. It was unavailable to miss this type of conversation. What are we missing here, and what do we need to have a GDPR for accessibility, for inclusion, to make this conversation go mainstream and be everywhere, and everybody assume the importance that it has in society?
Well, I think that there is a lot of, as somebody called, inflation of two words, GDPR and AI. However, they both have an incredible, valid and a right place in our conversation. Well, as you know, data is extremely important, and some people have abused it, have misused it. So quite understandably, sometimes people are quite self-aware of what they've done, the digital footprint they leave behind. Hence, they try to actually, anything to do with personal conditions and disabilities is always a taboo subject. No, you can't do that. You can't share that information. You can't learn from that experience. But I do feel there's so much to be learned from experience of the disabled people trying to use our technology, what doesn't work, and we need to share that. We need to get that to the community, the developer community, to make sure that they understand the needs of people. And by putting them into a little silo and in a corner saying it's sensitive information, I think we're making a mistake. That's where AI comes in. You can actually collect all that experience, you can collect all that data, anonymize it, or do whatever they could, generalize the data, and then start actually mapping out who needs what technology for the best, the most efficient way of participating in our digital work. one of the things we do for our clients at the moment is to assessment of their needs. So we go out and in a workplace and find out what disabilities they have, how it impacts their work, and what technology we can bring in to help them to overcome that disability. So for us is to find tools to overcome barriers. But we discover for every 100 cases we look at, we find a lot of similarities between people having similar conditions. So what we do is we collect all that data. We have tens of thousands of those cases. Now we're using machine learning to try to bring out some sort of a self-helping tool. It's called decision support system. So we could now make that available to everyone. Say, look, I have a visual impairment, but I want to work in accountancy. What can I do? And that you don't need to really complicate it. You don't need to go to your physicians, to your doctors, get a certificate. Yes, I'm blind. Can I have some help? We can actually get that help using this machine learning AI. That should happen very soon. Microsoft have done that. They've again gone to thousands of people who have different disabilities and learning, like visual impairment, developed a tool which is used by everyone now for free of charge. These are all, to me, is that conversation has to be mainstream. We have to bring real cases to the scene so people can understand the impact of not doing it right, and also the benefit of doing it right. Now, I saw the other day in a street, there was a blind person walking with a camera on the forehead and some sort of a microphone. Then you've heard about this crowdsourcing. So this person is live streaming the video, and lots of people seeing it and helping to identify, where they're going, what obstacles, what they're looking at. So you have somebody else on your shoulder telling you where to go and what to do. Now that's second sight. It's just like God giving you another pair of eyes, except they're virtual. So the power of technology and how we can share the experience is really important.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And I think that I've seen a similar product called IRA, so which it's been launched in the States, and a customer of mine, Gary O'Donoghue, who works for the BBC, he did a thing on BBC Click for it. So he was walking down the Washington Monument, having it audio described as he went, and he was able to use the audio description to be able to look at his, check into an airline at an airport himself, which anyone who is disabled will know is actually very, very difficult, because most of the time the airlines just want to put you into a wheelchair and push you through. There's very little dignity when flying if you happen to have a disability. So these kind of things are, not only are they enabling people to have choice, but they're also enabling people to have dignity and be effective.
But look at the experience of World Cup, right? Everybody's talking about World Cup. Where's the pleasure for a blind person to go into an atmosphere like a stadium, unless somebody's describing to him, what's going on, because there's silence apart from shouting. So you need someone to be your eyes and ears. That's what technology can bring to you. And I think the pleasure you get out of museums, going to art places, and somebody describing what you're looking at. Blind people also have imagination. Describe it to them, they create their own world, they create their own art. That's what I think we can do with technology. And I think this is where I'm glad to see, as much as I love to see lots of wheelchair users out in the street, it shows that we are actually now embracing diversity in that sense. We understand people are not perfect. We all will become disabled one day. I think the digital world is having the same experience. They now realize it is it's a large community. Everyone needs to participate. How do we make it happen? Task Force, the Business Disability Technology Task Force, are creating short films, maybe 1 minute each, from very key important people in the businesses who talk about the importance of accessibility in their lives. Without it, they couldn't do their work. One of them is Paul Smythe. The other one is Paul Beppy from BBC. We've got several people who couldn't do their job without those accessibility features. And we're hoping to pass this to all their development communities, IT people, and say, this is why you need to do it right. Doesn't cost you anything. You're skilled, intelligent people. Use your intelligence to help others. And by doing so, you're actually broadening your base. You're broadening your customers. You're broadening your appeal. So do it before it's too late.
Yeah. No, so that's fantastic. So one of my colleagues has just done the filming for one of those videos.
Yes, and I hope I hope that Atos is going to put a good statement why Atos takes it very seriously.
We do, and we do believe that this is not only helping make employees more effective, but the organisation too. It's essentially, I think you've mentioned it, but to a large extent, it's also a trigger for innovation. So understanding the complex needs of people who are, essentially edge cases, enables us to build better products and services for everyone.
Yeah, I believe if you get into this field right now, if you're a digital developer, if you get into this field right now, you have the edge. In 5 years' time, if you don't get into it, you've lost out. So it's a double whammy for people who don't do it properly. One, they don't get the edge and they don't get the market share. Two, actually they'd be irrelevant, like many other things that just disappeared from history. You need to actually reinvent yourself. And, I think diversity is mainstream now. So you have to kind of start looking for minorities like the middle-aged men occupying maybe management roles. Things are changing. Welcome to the new world. And I think we're going to feel sorry for them as well soon. Because there'll be lots of women occupying good important seats and lots of disabled people getting to important places. We must not forget one thing very important in our lives. The greatest inventions, the greatest innovations happen to be done by people who are disabled, we consider disabled. I know you hear about Einstein's and you hear about Stephen Hawking, but there are lots of people who've actually saved the world from destruction. Who was the one who invented that? Who was that guy? I keep forgetting his name, but it's important in that it deciphered the German secret.
Alan Turing.
Yeah, he was also autistic. From all accounts, people say he was autistic. But there's a lot of people who made a big difference to the world, and they weren't considered normal. So that's the thing. That is what we're missing out if we don't do it right. The world can go in a much better direction if we have more people participating, especially those who've actually suffered a lot of disadvantage, because they'd be more resilient. They'd be able to help us out of situations that so-called normal people can't do. Because if they could, they would have done it by now.
And so being normal is overrated. I think you should try to not be normal. I think that should be all of our goals. And I think all four of us are not normal. I remember.
Define normal first. Define normal, and then we can discuss that conversation.
Right. And my daughter with Down syndrome, she said to me one time, "Mom, I just want to be normal." I said, "No, you really, what? Why would you want to be normal? You need to be amazing and creative and innovative and go change the world. Be who you are."
To me, the classic
normal's
definition
overrated.
To me, the classic of definition of normal is the one who wrote the rule book, not the reality. Right. So, I mean, it's literally, I'm looking for someone who's 6 foot tall, is male, educated in a nice university, he's come from a middle-class family, because he understands the world, he understands problems, he can fix it. Now, maybe so, but there are lots of people who come from a different background that could equally as good and probably better. So, to me, putting people in boxes and into different sort of, categories is just not right. You've got to contribute to the society because it is our world. We all need to live in it, and we design it equally, and hopefully we can all enjoy it equally.
Absolutely. So, I think it was one of our former guests, Stephen Frost, said that diversity is reality, but inclusion is a choice, and we want to choose to be inclusive, and we believe that it's in the best interest of society and business to do that. Everyone wins. Nasser, it's been a real pleasure to chat with you this afternoon. I learned new stuff about you and about what you're doing. It's been great. We need to just say a quick thank you to Barclays for supporting us, and we look forward to joining you on Twitter on Tuesday.
Well, thank you again. Lovely to see you both. Bye.